Hello, hello. Good evening slash morning slash midday slash night, wherever you're from. Welcome, welcome. It's been a while, huh? Yeah, it's been a while. It feels like it's been a while. I think I only missed one stream, but yeah. How are you guys doing? Hey, Duck, how are you? I'm good. A little bit sick, but nothing too bad. Thoughts on new prop crypto firm? I haven't looked into it. I have no idea. But I'm sure it's cool. I always rewatch at 1.25x speed, but life is also nice. Yeah, I tend to try to slow down, and then people can speed it up. It's better than the other way around, I think, because, yeah, some people need a little bit more time, some need less. Did you watch Loom fight? I actually completely missed it, but I do know how it went. Monthly closed Twitter account open. The Twitter account was open for like 10 hours and then I closed it. So, yeah. Credits involved, so I'm sure it'll be good stuff. Yeah, exactly. Kind of my thinking too. Why can't we break 38K? Because we're in job mode. It feels and looks like job. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about all of that. But yeah. Big welcome to everyone. Appreciate you guys coming by. Big shout out also to Woo for sponsoring the show. Their links are in the description. Go check them out. They're quite cool. At least to us. You're going to have to figure out if they're cool to you. But I've been trading there and I've been enjoying it. So yeah, if you want to do that too, you can check out the link in the description. I was promised a hot tub stream. Nah. Nothing of the sort. The only hot tubs ducks are in are usually deadly, so we'll leave that. How much higher than 37.2k you need to get your balls tickling? Yeah, we can talk about that. So the monthly close is coming in. We have one more day to go, and we're actually trading above resistance right now. Now it's a little bit of a shitty area, in my opinion. Like, if you remember how I was talking about all of this price action, I was basically like, there's nothing really interesting on the monthly in terms of resistances, right? Besides 35k. Now we are in that area and we're trading at 35k. But generally, like what I usually do, and the only reason why I didn't do it this time is because I like to have a line here and a line there, as in like this range. But usually if I have these kind of candle closes at the bottom, I like to box them out because that's kind of where the area of interest is, generally speaking. And so we're kind of in the shitty situation where, yeah, I want to see a 35k plus close, but also I would actually like it to close significantly above 37.2. Where it is right now, that wouldn't be enough. You can barely see it trading above resistance. And you could also argue like there's resistance right here. So it's a shitty area, because basically what this makes you do is there's so many resistances that you can draw now, that it basically makes you buy into resistance no matter what you do. So I actually would like it to reject so we can do again. I like go again. But if it doesn't reject, you're kind of in the shitty position where you might have to buy into resistance, which is a little bit problematic. I'm not the biggest fan. Now for me, it's quite nice because I bought from 16k, right? I sold 37.5. We're trading now at 37.8. If I miss like 1 or 2k on that move, or even if I miss 5k, it's not the end of the world. But still, like we're in this shitty situation where the monthly is quite inconclusive. It is an area of resistance, and the best way to kind of just look at it is, I mean, we've had a massive range here, and the lower 10-20% of that range are resistance, is resistance, and just gonna have to basically either bite the bullet and buy resistance or wait until it gets conclusive. for me personally, I'm gonna just wait. I don't have any rush. I think at this point, if we find resistance here and go down, I'll get to buy cheaper. If we don't and we go up, I have a feeling that we will, like if we go up from here significantly towards like 45, 46, I think we're gonna get a basically sell the news event on the Bitcoin ETF front, at least a spike lower, and I think that could take us back to the area where we are trading in right now. So basically, if you get rejected, there's a chance that I get to buy lower. If not, I could see this go towards like 40, 45, and then I think we're gonna get a pullback into 35 to 38k. So for me, I'm not really in a rush. I'm quite happy sitting sidelined still. Capo vibes, yeah. Yeah, but Capo vibes where I bought the bottom. So at least something, huh? But for me, like in general, like this is something that I say every stream, and people actually get tired of hearing it, but I don't really care too much. Like I generally buy setups, not necessarily price, right? Like I don't care where I buy as long as the setup is good. So if it goes to 50 and I get to buy 50 towards 70, I'm happy with that too. Like you're not gonna see me crying about gains. And if I could have made more, I could have made more. That's just how it goes. But yeah, that's kind of my high time frame kind of view right now. We're trading back in the old range. This is the first test of the old range, and we have a bunch of basically good news that pushed us into this. Which just has me a little bit defensive, right? Like you trade into resistance, you struggle with that resistance a little bit, even though you're having a good news backing. It's not necessarily something that I want to be exposed to. So yeah, that's kind of my stance right now, but it could change. So high time frame at resistance. It's going to be interesting how it closes. If we move towards like 40, 41, 42 tomorrow, that will look much more conclusive, right? At that point, if you get a close at 42, I think at any point in time, the 35 to 37k pullback will be interesting, right? Would you consider this a rising wedge? No. I think those kind of, like that terminology is just more often than not, especially in crypto, just wrong. Like it doesn't help you in any way. Duck, please rebuy so this thing can finally go up. I already put everything where it needs to be for like just making my taxes pain-free. So at the earliest, you're going to see me rebuy in a month, as in the new year on the 1st of January, which at this point I would wait for no matter what happens. So if this rallies until then, so be it. I'll try to catch a pullback and a good setup. Right, because we had a good setup at 16k. I just don't see it here at 37 point something. Right, I fail to see how that is a better buy than 16k. But if it closes into the range at like 40, 42, whatever, pulls back, at that point you have the old range reclaim into retest. Right, as in like you fell out of the range, you came back, you retest some. Like in some form or another, doesn't even have to go back to 35, can just go to 37, 38, and then it starts looking quite good. Are you interested in 37.3k and push up to 40k from here? Now, if it goes at 37.3 this month, I'll consider that a close at resistance again, and then I'll wait another month. But I would wait another month anyway, right? But my technicals are basically, if you close too close to resistance, I still see it as closed at resistance, not above it. At these time frames, like a few $100 are rounding errors, basically. So they don't matter too much. Can you explain how you were able to buy the bottom? I mean, it was mainly like just how the market reacted to news, right? So we had a bunch of bad news. The market just kept on going down. And then we had FTX imploding, and that was this month here. And in comparison to what happened here, you can it's quite visible how this was tiny in comparison, even though that news was much bigger. And then we got an onslaught of bad news during December, and nothing happened, right? Like literally nothing happened. Price just went sideways, and sentiment went extremely negative. And then I was like, okay, you have sentiment very bad, you have bad news that don't impact price, and it looks like accumulation to me, so good enough. Are you sure there's a clear wedge on the weekly? I think all of those patterns are memes. Like that's, to me, this is just like, I mean, I can tell you, like I can draw you a bunch of patterns. I could even draw you like whatever. Like I could draw you this, and you could be like, oh shit, but it doesn't matter. Like you could draw any pattern on any chart. For me, this is just meme lines. They don't mean anything. What changed your mind from holding until 10 days after ETF approval? Wasn't that the initial strategy? My mind changed because we ran into resistance, and I was like, okay, might as well. Like if we were trading at 32 right now, or like if we traded at 43 or whatever right now, I'd be probably trading differently. But the way we went into this resistance, I was like, okay, I've had enough. I milked this enough. Like, I mean, just look at this move, right? This is what I got, basically. And I kind of closed this position and reopened it a couple times, so it's even more in percentage terms. And for me, that's good enough for the year, right? And if I miss the next 50%, I mean, I already made like 160 or 170 on Bitcoin alone. I'm good with that. So the only monthly close which would look strong is 40k plus. How far from resistance we talking? No, so the monthly generally, like if it closes green, which it very likely will, actually is quite a good thing, because we closed here as a bearish retest, right? And technically speaking, the most bearish thing that could have happened is just a red monthly close here, right? But that didn't happen. Very unlikely that we lose and go all the way back below 34k tomorrow. Possible. End of month shenanigans is quite strong. This is something that you have to be prepared for. Like going into the monthly close usually is wild, especially in these kind of important areas. But unlikely, like very unlikely. So that would have been the most bearish thing. That didn't happen. Now, if it closes anywhere in between 35 and 37, that's like, it's at resistance, but it didn't do the most bearish thing, so it's not that bad. It's just the only way this is giga bullish basically is if it closes far enough away from 37.2. For me anyway. Like basically, if this goes up a bunch, I can buy the retest and I actually have a setup again, because then you're above this cluster of resistances in here, and then you can play the flip side. You have a kind of an easy stop loss, because if you close below 34k on the monthly time frame, you definitely want to be out of that trade. At that point, it looks like shit. So that's quite easy then, right? Whereas if you close here, like, I mean, technically you're still buying into the bearish retest. Whereas your stop loss has to be like, I mean, you could still put it below, but then if you close anywhere in between here, there's a good chance that it might even just chop through that. So like that makes the trade a more difficult one. But this is in general, as long as it closes in the area of like 37.2, it's not a bad monthly close. It's just not enough for me to have a setup, right? Like that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the market to look super bullish, because what am I going to do with a market that is super bullish where I don't have a setup? Like I could just blindly buy, yes, but that's not what I do, right? I tend to try buying and selling on setups more so than on, oh, this market looks bullish, this market looks bearish. So no matter what happens, unless it closes red, this is not the worst. And it's not that bearish in my eyes. It's just not good enough. And that's in general like my view on the market right now. Like this is not bearish. It's just not good enough. and I don't have a setup anymore. Would your strategy be the same if it wasn't end of year taxes? Not necessarily, no. Like if I didn't have the tax stuff, I would have maybe kept it a little bit longer. But also, like I bought a new place. We're gonna move into it. All of that into the new year. So I'll be busy December and January anyway, because we're moving, and moving with a child and like renovating stuff is just a lot of work. So my personal circumstances are just, it makes a lot of sense. Like we closed at monthly resistance. We've kind of pushed it quite far. I'm moving. There's a bunch of things to do, finding new doctors, all that kind of stuff. So for me, it makes a lot of sense. For others, it might not. So this is always a thing, you know, like you kind of have to trade your own book. You're not in the same position as I am. Why did your voice become sexier in 1 week? Because the reason why my voice is gone is not necessarily because I'm sick. It's actually because my daughter has been teething in the last few days, and the only thing that calms her down is me singing to her. So I've been singing quite a bit, and my voice cannot handle it. So that's the story behind that one. That's why I sound different. I wouldn't necessarily say sexier. I mean, I haven't listened to myself, but I can definitely tell that I have, like, my voice is weird. Sing to us someday. No, you guys can go fuck yourself. You discussed paying attention when price action is led by old school exchanges such as Kraken. How can we garner which exchange is pushing price? So there's a few ways. You can just basically overlay all the exchanges and just see the premiums that you have in between them, right? It's the easiest way. There's other ways. I'm not the guy to ask for this kind of stuff. So basically what I do is I have a bunch of people that love to crunch numbers, and whenever I'm like, this might be an important point to know where things are, I just ask them, and then I don't have to do the work myself. So I'm not the perfect guy to ask, but there's ways to do it. One way is being lazy and kind of smooching off of your friends, which also works. But yeah. Duck up or down? I just joined. So like the overarching theme is basically, depending on how the monthly close goes, and we have 1 day to go. It doesn't look that bad. It's just I don't have a setup, so I'm quite neutral, and I'm flat. So there you go. I'm not too giga bearish. I'm leaning bearish. To me, this is the monthly level, by the way. This has been kind of the area where the weekly has been struggling too, as you can see. I'm kind of on the fence. I want to be bearish, but I can also tell that a part of that might just be because I'm on the sidelines. So like I always take it with a grain of salt. My gut feeling is there's a good chance we go down a little, but that could be completely wrong. And I'm definitely not short, right? Like I don't have a bullish setup. But yeah, that was the monthly time frame, a little bit long. I think that took us like 20 minutes. Is what it is. Now we're on the weekly time frame, and the weekly time frame looks quite a bit better if you ignore this monthly level, which I mean you can. We're still quite a bit above support. I think in general with all of these wicks to the downside, there is a chance that we just kind of like go down and retest lower levels of support at 32, 33K. That looks like a good area to do business in, right? Just ignoring everything else. If the monthly closes well, and so far so good, right? It's at least not bearish. If it loses, if it drops all the way back down here tomorrow, it would be very bearish. Then definitely don't buy weekly support, right? But if the monthly closes okay, you have quite good weekly support down here. So you have an area where you can do dip buying. Now, whether that area gets tested or not, I don't know. But I like 32 to 33K if the monthly closes well. If the monthly closes poorly, I'll just remove all the supports and then like look for lower. And in general, in my opinion, and this is why I'm so defensive, in my opinion, if we get a Bitcoin ETF, right, I think we're going to get a spike up that will be faded quite substantially pretty soon afterwards. So I think in general, and I could be wrong on this, right? Like this is just what I think is going to happen, which is not really something that has to happen at all. But if it does, I could see price action like this, where you spike up, you bleed down a little bit, and then you capitulate. And that might be an interesting area to look for business, depending on, at that point, once the ETF news is out of the way, and this is like the big problem, right? We've been moving a little bit decorrelated from the rest of the markets. And I think once the ETF thing is through, we're going to kind of correlate again. So you're going to have to look at the S&P and stuff again. So once the initial news is out of the way, that's going to be like, is the S&P going to go up or not? Kind of price action. Would you be able to sustain a short position here? No. I don't like to short generally, and I only like to short when stuff gets completely ridiculous. And this is not necessarily ridiculous, right? We're not at new all-time highs, whatever. It doesn't look like the entire trend is exhausted. If anything, just looking at this thing, you'd get a pullback, right? Like I wouldn't expect. So for example, like when we're trading at 60K, when we broke below 60K, I was like, I can see a short here, because at that point, basically what you can do, and that's quite easy to do, is you have your stop loss above the high and you just target whatever. Range low was what I was talking back then. That was 30K. That kind of short I can see. Now, what do you do here, right? Like, so you short this, and this is obviously on a higher time frame basis. Your stop loss is basically going to get triggered if the Bitcoin ETF is getting approved, unless you put it all the way here. And then if you put it all the way up here, I mean, where's your target? Like, if you put it down here, like that's just kind of shitty. You lose way more than you gain. If you put it all the way here, you're an idiot. So, I mean, what the fuck do you do? Like, at this point, yeah, it could go down. But like, what do you do on a short position, right? You kind of basically have to pray to God that people immediately sell into the Bitcoin ETF news. Now, obviously, if that Bitcoin ETF news is actually bearish, as in like it gets denied, which so far anyone smart that I've talked with, no one believes in it. And I tend to trust other people on this more, because I mean, I don't have any extra info, and I'm not a giga brain on the traditional side of things. I have no idea what the fuck they're doing. But everyone that I trust to be smart has been pretty clear on the front that they think the Bitcoin ETF is going through, right? So you're kind of in this shitty position where, yeah, you might get a pullback, but like a high time frame short, I just don't see. If anything, and this is why I think it might get faded. If you get a Bitcoin ETF announcement, then you can short into the pop and hope that it goes down. But Capo said 12K, yeah, but Capo said that at 16K. It's the funniest thing to me. Like, if you're at 16K and you're targeting 14, like, well, what are you doing, really, realistically? Like, for a bottom, right? Like, what are you doing? Those 2K are not going to change anything. Are you moving to more crypto-friendly areas? Do you suggest this for crypto traders? No, I couldn't give less of a fuck. I think in general, like a lot of the places that are not crypto-friendly are the ones that are just like a little bit more sane. If you just look at, like, the thing is, right, from a crypto perspective, it's so easy to kind of be like angry at the people that are negative crypto, right? But if you look at it from an outsider perspective, what basically happens every time is you have a crypto bubble, you have a small percent of people that are early in this, and this is basically us, right? And then you have a huge amount of people that come late, and they buy our bags. These people, they completely lose everything. These people make a shitload of money, and then they take that money, they don't pay taxes on it, They don't benefit anything to society, right? This is just a bunch of nerds basically sitting at home doing nothing. They don't even pay taxes. They move their money to a tax haven, and then all of these people are fucked because they bought into the scams. These people kind of promote it. I mean, you kind of have to be insane to be on the crypto side here. Like, let's be real. Like, for us, it's easy to say, like, hey, this is just not cool, whatever. Why are you going after crypto? But, like, at the end of the day, like, what has come out of crypto, right? Like, in my opinion, like, the reasonable stance is actually being against crypto. If you are not completely in the topic, and no one can be, right? And then the moment you're in the topic, you're kind of like, you have your backs, you know, like it's just literally how it is. Like a large majority of the people, they get promoted into these scams, and you see this every single bull market, and then we make out like bandits. I'm sorry, but yeah. So I actually think the places that are crypto unfriendly, it kind of makes sense to me. It's more reasonable. Now, obviously, I don't move to the place that is the most crypto unfriendly just because, but I'm not going to choose where I'm going to live based on whether it's crypto friendly or not. I'm going to choose it based on where my family is, where my friends are, and where I think it's a good place to raise children, basically. So that's kind of like, that's how I see it. It's a little bit negative, but that comes from having been in the space for more than, I was about to say like more than 5 years, but it's been quite a bit more than that actually. So yeah, that's my jaded view of it. I totally understand. I think we kind of deserve all the shit we get. Anyway, the weekly time frame still looks good, right? Like if you get a dip towards, like I said, 32K, and the monthly close as well, that's good news. That's what you want to see, like a good monthly close, dip towards 32, 33K. That's a really good buy, I think, because you have a pretty tight invalidation. That can start out as basically, so if you take that trade, because, and I want to make that clear only if you get a good monthly close, right? But basically, if you take that trade, what you can basically do is you start off with this trade, which is already quite good, right? And then if you move up, you can move your stop loss basically to break even. Because what happens, let's say this does this, goes down here, bounces. If it ever retests this level, it's probably going to go lower. Right, so you have a really nice setup because one, the risk to reward is just massively in your favor. Two, there's a good chance that you just get a little bit of momentum going. And three, even if you're wrong, you're kind of like protected in a way, but that like it's very likely to get a bounce from 32K. Like no matter what happens, I'd expect a bounce from 32K. What is your trading strategy? Do you use volume, fibs, Elliott waves, support resistance levels, etc.? So I would say like mostly support resistance levels, but like actually mostly just basically common sense in a way at this point. So basically what I explained earlier with how is the market reacting to news, how is the market set up, how are people kind of acting around the market, like can you see desperation, can you see euphoria, all that kind of stuff. It's very little in the sense of, okay, I need to have Elliott waves or whatever. I don't even know how the fuck they work, couldn't care less. And then that coupled with support resistance lines, and then that's my trading strategy. I don't look at anything else. Sometimes I ask people if I'm curious about something else, but I don't really care too much. I don't think hating something you don't understand is ever justified. Dude, how much suffering has crypto kind of introduced to people, right? Like how much in comparison to how much good it has done. And I think that's a equation that is very, very skewed in the direction of how like the harm has been like way greater. And if you see that from the outside, I mean, yes, you can make judgments, in my opinion anyway. Like, I get it. I would do the same thing if I wasn't in crypto. Like, if I got into crypto later, I probably wouldn't ever have gotten into crypto because it is quite the dirty industry. Isn't 32K the entry everybody wants? Front run likely. I think if you get it, like for example, if you get the ETF approved and then you nuke, people would be afraid to buy 32K. But yeah. Excuse me. Okay. But that's how money works. Yeah, to an extent. Anyway, that's the weekly time frame. We're moving so slow. It's just me. It's just me trying to avoid the old coins. I'm just stretching these segments to make sure I don't have to talk about old coins. No, I'm just kidding. The daily time frame. There's not really that much support resistance going on. We've kind of been struggling with 38K, but that's an interesting one, right? Because this has been tested so many times, you'd actually expect it to kind of break. If you're confused why my line goes through price, I actually like those trend lines better than the ones that don't. It's basically just to show me where the majority of the price action is gonna be, and as you can see, that's kind of been the case. So that's been quite nice. Been tracking that. Whenever it goes too high above it, it's been a good sell. Whenever it went below aggressively, it's been a good buy. And yeah, we're kind of pushing into 38K. So I honestly could see this break to the upside. It's just interesting to see whether it fades afterwards or not. If it falls out of this, and this is kind of like at that point, you can actually just draw a trend line. But there's not going to be a good one no matter how you do it. So I'm just going to follow this one. So if you start closing below this trend line, I could actually see a dip towards like the lower levels. So 33, 34, whatever. But the daily doesn't really have that much signal to me. It is interesting how it keeps pushing into 38K, right? Like it's the only thing there. Whenever you test the resistance too many times, at some point it's bound to break. So far, it looks like it just doesn't want to. But that's more like much more bullish chart than it's a bearish chart. So we have the monthly, which is at resistance, doing okay, not the worst, right? But slightly negative in my eyes. Then we have the weekly, which is most definitely positive. And then we have the daily, which is also more on the positive side of things. So if you want to look for bullish versus bearish arguments, and this is why I said I don't like the short, I think you have more bullish arguments than you have bearish ones. Now, the question whether you have a bullish or bearish setup is a different one. And I don't have either, so I'm just not in the market. Everybody's also expecting ETFs sell the news. I don't think so. No. Everyone, if you mean everyone, like the 10 people you follow on Twitter, maybe. But that's not necessarily a good representation of everyone. But yeah, could be that it goes up after the ETF news. This is just my thoughts. I don't have the ability to look into the future. I mean, there's something that everyone has to be pretty. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? No one has that ability, so I could just be wrong. Happens from time to time. Hasn't happened in a while, but I mean, I'm bound to be wrong at some point, right? So maybe this is the time. Now, on the ETH BTC front, I mean, that just looks horrendous. It's actually just a hilarious chart. I thought, and this is like a couple of weeks ago, basically, when we got this candle, I bought the ETH ETF announcement, and I made like, I don't even know, like 5% or something, 6% on this day. And it's literally been bleeding out since, which is just hilariously bearish, right? You get very, very good news. and you bleed out, that's very bearish. This is basically exactly the inverse of what I did with Bitcoin. I was looking at Bitcoin, I was looking at the news, I was looking at all the sentiment, and I was like, oh, this is actually quite nice. It's quite a nice setup because it doesn't care about bad news. It doesn't care about anything. It's just doing its thing, and people are very bearish, but price action doesn't reflect that. I think ETH is doing the opposite. ETH has good news. ETH has a lot of positive sentiment, and it's doing the exact opposite of what it should be doing. So not the biggest fan of ETH. I think there's better altcoins to buy, as I've been saying basically forever. And the weekly time frame, the only thing that the ETH ETF announcement or the ETH ETF filing announcement, whatever, you guys get what I'm saying, did was a bearish retest. That was the only green candle really on the chart, and that's not what you want to have. So ETH, not the biggest fan. On the USD front, it actually doesn't look that bad. It's just a testament to how strong Bitcoin has been. Bitcoin has a very aggressively bullish weekly chart. ETH USD has a somewhat bullish weekly chart. It barely moved above resistance, but it did move above resistance, so we can turn this green, which is quite good in my opinion. You just really don't want to see it lose that again. So below 1.9k, ETH turns to shit really, really fast, I think, as long as it's trading above there. I mean, that doesn't look that bad, which basically just means you have a little bit more confidence on your Bitcoin positions if you're bullish, because you have the ETH USD chart on your side, right? Like that's a little bit of confidence that makes the Bitcoin long better, because the ETH BTC chart definitely doesn't scream buy ETH. If anything, you look at the ETH USD chart and you're like, oh, that's not that bad. Let me buy Bitcoin, which is quite funny. It's been the opposite way for quite a while. Like back in 2020, 21, 22, whatever, it was always Bitcoin is good, buy ETH. Now it's like Bitcoin, ETH USD looks okay, buy Bitcoin. So that's that. I think like if it loses 1.94, like you just get giga bearish and you target way lower until that happens. I mean, whatever. It's not a chart that you would want to buy, but also because it is above resistance, you don't necessarily want to short this. But if it loses this, I think it's a good short, because basically you get all the bearishness from ETH USD on top of just the ratio being shit. So yeah. And yeah, the ETH BTC trend line someone mentioned in the chart is still quite a little bit lower. If it kind of comes here and loses momentum to the downside, maybe that starts getting attractive again. So yeah, that's ETH. With altcoins, the one that's been outperforming still is Solana. No big surprise. The stuff that outperforms like early tends to outperform generally. So that's still good. It's in the middle of nowhere right now on the Bitcoin pair and on the USD pair too. So I think if the market goes to shit, I think Solana is interesting at $30. If it doesn't, I mean, you could target much higher. So you could target into the 90s because there's no real resistance up here. I think if anything, 80 to like 110, like somewhere there is the bullish target, and the bearish target is 30, which kind of sucks, right? Because I don't think like any support here is good. I don't think any resistance here is good, which makes this quite hard to trade. That's why it's nice when you have a position early on. If you're still bullish, and technically speaking, this is a very clean uptrend on the weekly time frame with just 1 week of consolidation that isn't even that bad, right? So Solana still looks quite good. And this is what I meant when I said, like, there's just so much better looking altcoins, right? Look at this. This is Sol BTC. That's a bullish looking chart in general. And now look at this in comparison to ETH BTC, and it's a very bearish looking chart, right? So I think there's better altcoins. then ETH. If you want to be bullish, and if you want to be bearish, I mean, ETH's good place to look. Any tips on learning German? Been living in Austria for half a year and it's going really slowly. I wish I could help you. My fiance is also learning German and she's struggling also. It's just quite tough, I think, to learn. And you just gotta stick with it. The best way to learn languages is just hanging out with people that speak that language as much as you can. Can you take a look at S&P and Coin? Coin actually looks quite good from what I saw. And that makes sense, right? And the reason why that makes sense is because Binance got a big hit and that's bullish Coinbase. So there's not really that much to say on this. I think the chart is pretty meaningless at this point. Like, you have resistance here at like 160 or whatever, but I think all of those high time frame levels are meaningless. Support levels, I mean, this is already, like, this was the old range. You chopped through it a little bit, came back above it. That was the good signal when it came back above 85. If it comes back to that range, it's useless. So I think TA is pretty useless on this thing. If you're bullish crypto, now that Binance is kind of out of the picture a little bit, this seems pretty decent. If you're bearish crypto, this seems pretty decent. This is basically just like if you're betting on crypto or betting against crypto. You can do whatever you want. Levels are pretty meaningless. It's a pretty new chart, all things considered. And I don't think any of these old levels will do much. And the S&P, yeah, that's actually gonna close at resistance more likely than not. One more day to go, but it's the second test of resistance, right? So generally, when I look for bearish setups in these kind of circumstances, how can I do this best? Oh, I'm such a bad chartist. I forgot where the... Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So, okay, then we can draw easily. When I have these kind of... boxes, right? And this is basically what this is. What I tend to look for bearishness is you get rejected here at the high, and then I want to get rejected here at the low. That's what I want to see if it's going to be bearish, right? And that's one of the most bearish kind of setups that you can have, where you get rejected at the high and then at the low, making a lower high. Oh, my voice is going completely now. That's what I would want to see for bearishness. That's not what happened, right? So basically it went all the way back. It's at resistance, but at this point, instead of turning the lower part into resistance, you have it now as support, right? So even if this pulls back, you have pretty decent support at 4.35 now. So the S&P doesn't look that bad right now, and it's probably going to close quite nicely, but it's still at resistance. But it's quite close to all-time high, actually. So pretty tough. I'm not trading this market, just a little bit, but I don't have a strong view, basically. This is beyond my pay grade. I'm, for some reason, good enough to trade crypto, but this is just not me. But yeah, when I'm charting stuff, like if it gets rejected at the high, I would have wanted it to get rejected here, like lower. The fact that it went higher means we basically turned all of this back into support, which for bears is not great. And for bulls is actually great. And then you can look for pullbacks into 4.3, 4.35, whatever in there. And then maybe get a new all-time high. I hope ETH will skyrocket. Yeah, but I think even if ETH skyrockets, which is possible, but I mean, it's just a fucking hilarious chart. Like, point on this chart where you got an application for an ETH ETF that can actually be taken serious. Where you think that is, right? It's this fucking candle. And that's fucking hilarious. Like, that's just bad. But if ETH rockets, I think other things will rocket 10 times more, basically. So you're in this shitty situation where if you hold ETH, you're going to be outperformed no matter what happens. You have some guy in the chat that's like, you're wrong every time. Fair enough. I'll just remove you from the chat. Not because whatever, but I mean, like, the thing is, I like to get criticism when I've actually been wrong. I don't like it when I've been right. But yeah. ETH BTC needs to reset down. It kind of looks that way, yeah, to me anyway. And even if it doesn't, like I said, I think even if this goes up from here, which seems unlikely, but I mean, I never say never. And the monthly chart is at support now. I mean, you're going to get Sol put in 50% candles while ETH puts in 2 or 3%. Does it mean anything to you that Bitcoin volume is dropping and price is going up? Not really, no, because I mean, a bunch of people are basically like, you have a bunch of people are looking at all this exchange data and trying to make sense of it. What you have to understand is that you have huge CME, open interest, and trading volumes and all that kind of stuff. So like all of that data that you're looking at is just not accurate anymore. Like when you, like, let's say you have Binance here, right? Like this is how it used to be. You have Binance here, you have FTX, and then you have, this was FTX. Obviously now it doesn't exist anymore, but it was FTX, and then you had OKX and like all the other exchanges, whatever. There's a few more, right? That's how it used to be. And then people are kind of making trading strategies around like how volumes work and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, now FTX doesn't exist anymore. A bunch of the other exchanges have much lower volume. Now you have, and I mean, we've had this player for a while, but now you have CME in here that is just kind of like dwarfing everything else, right? Like that's just 10 times bigger than everything else. And then you try to make sense of the volume data that you have in here, which isn't even half of the picture. So, I mean, what is that going to tell you? And in my opinion, it's just not really going to help you. Funding rates are going to behave different now. Open interest is going to behave different now. It's just different. So volume, I wouldn't care too much. All of that stuff, I wouldn't care too much right now about it. Now, obviously, if you get high funding, it's one thing. If you get very, very low funding, it's another. But if you're like, oh shit, the market went up and funding is this and that way, and it's not really significant in any shape or form, it's a new paradigm now. Like, we're trading different. So horizontal lines and ETH BTCs, all that matters. For ETH, yeah. I mean, there's more to trading, but this is basically how I do it. But yeah, I think I'm gonna call it a day because my voice is completely going. It's gonna be interesting tomorrow with the monthly close coming in. So far, so good. This is actually much better than I expected it to be. So I'm not hating. I would like to see a conclusive close. But also, I'm going to be on the sidelines for the next 30 days anyway. So I don't really care too much. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. If it is a conclusive close, it makes dip buying into next month much, much easier. Maybe you don't get a dip. Maybe you do. Who the fuck knows? If you get shitty price action tomorrow and we kind of end up in between 35 to 37, that would not be great. At that point, it's just going to be another month of waiting. So yeah, there you go. That's all that I have to say. I'm just enjoying the free time, and being able to unplug from the market is quite valuable. I could kind of, like, for me personally, what happens when I'm trading too actively, and this has been one of the more active uptrends of trading for me. Like I traded quite a bit, and I was very in tune with it. Unplugging is quite hard. It took me a few days basically to not constantly think about price, which I think is quite good from time to time. So that's what I'm doing now until the next year. I think a health break is quite important in general, because this shit is addicting, and I don't like to be addicted to things. So that's kind of my stance, where I'm coming from. But yeah, I wish you guys the best. Let's see how this monthly closes tomorrow. Big shout out to Woo for sponsoring the show. Go check them out if you want to. The links are in the description. If you're not, also okay. And yeah, much love. Good evening, good day, good morning, whatever. Love you. Bye bye.